Hi, this is John Torrens from the Whitman School of Management at Syracuse University, and today we're going to be talking about Section 5 of your business plan, the marketing plan. So a quick overview of the marketing plan, why it's important, how to handle it in the written plan, and then using nuts and bolts as a guide. Well, the reason it's important is because it shows the reader, in this case judges, or in some other instances investors, that you've done your market research and that you're applying the results from that research to an actual plan to raise awareness and start selling your product or service. So it's basically a demonstration of all of your knowledge, your deep, in-depth, intimate knowledge of your customers. And that's really important to investors, judges, and so on. How to handle it? Again, this has got to be relatively short, 3 to 4 pages tops, which I know is sometimes difficult. Obviously, it's it's more difficult to write a short plan than a long plan, but it's very important to keep it short because nobody's going to take the time to read a long one, so you'd rather have them read it than not. When we get into examples of your marketing collateral and advertising, it's okay to refer to those in the body of the plan and just put them in the appendix. So that way they don't have to read through them, but if they want to look and see, what your image looks like, a few marketing examples or advertising examples, they can flip to the back and see it. Now, I would highly recommend that you do that because anything that makes this more tangible and more real for the judges is going to work in your favor. Because it's one thing to say, hey, we're going to have a great advertising campaign, and leave it at that, and it's a completely different thing to say we're going to have a very well thought advertising campaign, and here's a couple of examples of our print, our direct mail, our outdoor, or whatever it is. Okay, so examples are really important in this section. And then using nuts and bolts, again, we're going to go over the higher level broad categories. We're not going to get into the nitty gritty of the individual bullet points. Don't blow them off. If they happen to be important for your product or service, obviously address them, but higher level is fine. If you try to address every single bullet point, kind of like we talked about in the economic model session, you're going to get bogged down in all these crazy details and it's just going to get too long. So keep it brief but descriptive. Alright, so here's the sections, the broad sections of your marketing plan. First, of course, you're going to outline your overall strategy. Then you get into pricing, talk a little bit about the selling cycle. Then you're going to talk about specifically how, tactically how you sell, talk about your advertising, your promotions, your publicity. Warranty, guarantee, that's not a big deal. If you have a policy, you just state it. And then distribution. So of these, the things that are really important are pricing, your sales tactics, and your distribution. And we're going to get into all of those in a couple seconds here. So I like to use actual examples from previous business plans or students that I've had, and in this session we're going to use a company called Grounded. And Grounded was a company that recycled used coffee grounds into an organic pet shampoo, and it was basically a response to a problem that they noticed that coffee shops were throwing out hundreds and hundreds of pounds of coffee grounds, and they just thought, hey, why don't we utilize that for something? And they did their research and said, or they found out that coffee grounds actually have a lot of good uses. One of them is that it's a good cleaner. It's a deodorizer, disinfectant, and so on. So they decided to try to make a pet shampoo. And it's possible that in some other sessions we'll go back to Grounded because there's some really good design and development examples that come out of this one. Alright, so overall marketing strategy. This is just simply where you summarize your approach to marketing, and this is pulled right out of Grounded's business plan. And basically they're just telling you, what they want it to look and feel like. This is where they kind of portray their image and they reduce it to writing. Again, it's short and sweet, and you don't have to go into a lot of detail. Marketing mix. So this is where you demonstrate that you're acting upon your market research in a way that aligns with your company image and in line with your overall marketing budget. So this is important because you can't say you're going to, take out a Super Bowl ad if you only have a marketing budget of $10,000, for example. If your marketing budget is $10,000, that's what it is, but then you also have to demonstrate how you're going to be very creative and use more publicity and promotions and guerrilla tactics than you are standard advertising techniques. So the point is that everything has to be aligned and in balance. So again, this is an example pulled right from Grounded. And here they just talk about the various media they're going to use. And all it does is just demonstrates that they've thought it through and they understand that each single media has a purpose within their overall plan. and they just lay it out. So this gives the reader some confidence that you've thought it through, you understand how to reach out to your customers, and that's basically the purpose of it. Your company may not utilize all of these tactics. Perfectly fine. Just use whatever makes sense to you, and detail it a little bit. Okay, pricing. This is pretty simple. All you have to do is clearly list your prices. It's much easier just to use a chart for clarity rather than text. If you do have pricing available from competing products or maybe the next best alternative, I would include that just for comparison. It kind of reinforces the value proposition for your particular product or service. And then it's also important to provide a very short rationale for your pricing that's based on your market research, because a number is just a number, right? The price could be whatever it is, and who knows if that's realistic or not. But if you say something like 75% of the respondents to my survey indicated that they would pay between $15 and $18 for this product or service, then that makes more sense. Then if you're priced at $17, then it makes perfect sense as to why you've priced it that way, because you're basing it on your actual market research. And maybe this isn't the most appropriate for this part of the session in terms of writing the plan, but the work you did in determining your pricing, hopefully you actually did the math and realized what price was going to unlock the greatest number of customers, right? Because if 100% of the people said that they would pay $1 for your product and you priced it $1 to reach the entire market, that may not be quite as wise as pricing it at $10, even if only 30% of the market said they would spend $10 for it. You just have to do the math and figure out where you're going to make the most money when you take volume and margins into consideration. So that's pricing. So you list the prices, compare them to the other alternatives, and provide a brief rationale and somehow base that in your market research to prove that it's realistic. Selling cycle. So this is where you just discuss some timelines and launch date. And if your industry has certain milestones like trade shows or buyers meetings or things like that, definitely include those as mileposts. So the reader understands that, hey, there's a big trade show happening in the fall, and that's you're going to go there and you're going to have a booth, which by the way shows up in your marketing budget and your marketing plan, and that's where you're going to make the big splash and impact on your buyers and all that kind of stuff. All right, and you demonstrate your knowledge of how customers buy and how you and how your competitors sell to them. Okay, because again, it's a completely different conversation if you just say, well, we're gonna have a website and just kind of spray and pray with direct mail and email and things like that, right? Versus saying, hey, we know a big trade show is coming up in the fall and we're going to have a booth, and we know that 89% of the key decision makers and the companies we're trying to sell into attend the show, so on and so forth, right? It's different in terms of the feel, those two kinds of statements. Okay, and again, keep it brief. This doesn't have to be a very long section. It just has to be significant. All right, sales tactics, advertising, sales promotions, publicity. So this is where you get very specific about how you'll sell. Okay. And this is a pretty important part because it actually makes it real. And again, anything that's tangible and makes it real for the judges is going to really be helpful for you. Okay, so it's a great chance to show off your creativity with actual marketing collateral and real examples, which I'll show you in a second. If you have any samples, again, just put it in the appendix and refer to them in the body, or maybe if you have a little room in a margin, you can throw one in there or something just to pique some interest. And of course, in your actual presentation, your slide decks, you'll include some of these just to pull it out, make it pop, make it feel real, and generate some excitement. Okay, so on the next slide. This is a simple advertising strategy pulled right from Grounded. So you can see they have their advertising budget. And the advertising budget makes sense based on the body of their plan, and it kind of supports it. Okay, and this happens to be a, this is their advertising budget, and then this is just a tabletop display that they might have, for a retail installation or something like that. On the next slide, they have some partner advertising. So on the previous slide, you saw that Tim Hortons was important to them, and this is an example of the stand-up display that Tim Hortons had agreed to. This is an example of a card that Tim Hortons is agreeing to distribute, and they were agreeing to put the Grounded and Java Paws dog shampoo logo on the Tim Hortons cup to show that, Tim Hortons has, a good corporate social responsibility plan. They recycle their grounds, and you can buy the dog shampoo from our grounds right here, right? It's a nice virtuous loop type of message. So there's some examples of that. On the next slide, there's just a few external advertising examples. One of their things was to have this Puppies in the Park free dog wash to get people excited, generate some buzz. Wasn't going to cost them anything except for whatever shampoo they used and their time, but hopefully they were going to generate a lot of excitement about it. Right, and obviously people go to dog walks and dog parks, and people who are into that are passionate about their pets, and based on their market research, they knew that there was a real need for organic dog shampoos and so on, right? And then you've got this solar compactor example. This would just basically be an outdoor billboard type of advertising where you've got their dog print with a recycling logo on it and their company logo. So again, not that these are the best possible examples ever, but they're really good. They tie in very well with their image and their product, and it flows logically from the written part of their plan. So use your creativity and and show. You don't have to get this in depth, obviously, but the more you have that makes it real and makes it actually stand out is going to work in your favor. So as a startup, pre-revenue startup with not a lot of funding, you're going to rely on publicity and promotions, right? So it's really important that you show how you're going to use low-cost tactics, okay? So social media, and it's not enough just to say you're going to do Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn, Pinterest. You should have a strategy for how you're going to manage all those properties. Obviously, you don't have enough room to lay out your whole strategy, but if you have a person or a contractor or something that shows, I'm doing more than just saying I know social media is important, that would be helpful. Press releases are free, and most papers will take them. Ribbon cuttings with local politicians, or somehow being newsworthy, right? So if you can be an expert news source, or just kind of keep sending information to local news sources and see if they can get some coverage for you, that's really great. Now the upside is that it's free, and you can't possibly buy that type of third-party credibility, right? When you're the subject of a news story, that's very powerful. The downside is that you can't control the message, so you're not 100% sure what's going to go out there, but it's usually worth it. Okay, and then just general buzz, kind of like the Puppies in the Park thing, right? Didn't cost them a whole lot of money, but hopefully created a lot of buzz. All right, customer service, warranty, and guarantee policies. This is a paragraph in your plan. You don't need to give it a lot of real estate. State the policy if you have one. If it's a competitive advantage, explain how. So, for example, Nordstrom, kind of high-end retail, a competitive advantage that they have is that they have a no questions asked exchange policy. You walk into a Nordstrom store and want to return or exchange something, they just do it, no questions asked. That is a competitive advantage for them, right? Versus some other stores. So if you're in that situation, state it. If not, don't worry about it. Just kind of state the policy and move on. Distribution. This is the subject of a lot of questions during Q&A. One of the most popular questions has to do about distribution. So how do you get shelf space? How do you get rack space? How do you get referrals? How do you get this into the hands of the customer? Okay, so in terms of, I guess, degree of sophistication or degree of evidence, if you have a letter of intent, so say I'm, in Grounded's case, right? If they have a letter from the CEO or the chief marketing officer of Tim Hortons saying, hey, look, we're happy to do this, just let us know when you're ready to go, that's a very high level of evidence. I would refer to that in the body of the plan and stick it in the appendix, right? And kind of hang your hat on that, because that is very strong. Otherwise, you could just kind of rely on anecdotal evidence, or put copies of your email exchanges in the appendix and say, I've had a couple of conversations with the branch manager of the Tim Hortons in Syracuse or wherever you are, and he's very interested. He has the authority to do it on a local basis, and this is kind of the timeline we talked about. That's also strong and powerful if you can do that credibly and honestly, or if you can just understand or if you can demonstrate a deep understanding of the process, right? So Tim Hortons doesn't make decisions like this until December, and the process for putting this in front of them is to email the store manager, set up a meeting, and they have pitch meetings for all new product services or whatever it happens to be. If it's a technology and you need to kind of show it off at the big trade show in Las Vegas, you need to show that you know how all of that works. Okay, distribution is key. If you're a garment maker, and one of your key channels is Macy's, you have to be able to prove that you know how to sell into Macy's. Better yet, you've got a letter of intent from somebody high enough the food chain in Macy's saying, yes, we want to do this. Okay? Distribution is key. You could have the coolest, the best, the most awesome product or service in the world, but if you can't get it in the hands of your customers, nobody's going to want to invest in it. Okay? So that's where you briefly describe your channel strategy. Yeah, we've got maybe some retail outlets, we've got an online strategy, whatever it happens to be, detail it. So on the next slide, there's an example of Grounded's distribution strategy, right? So they've got some online, they've got retail, they've got social initiatives, and they've got non-traditional retailers, okay? And this just nice and neat in chart format kind of shows you how they intend to distribute various channels. And again, don't just throw this section away. It's really important. And a lot of times you're not going to be able to put everything in the body of the plan, so you can put things in the appendix. But during the actual presentation or pitch, that's where you can maybe detail some of this.